Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. We got a lot going on right now, and I thought that today would be a good use of my instructional coach hat. And I put together a quick little slide presentation that you'll have access to, but hopefully give you some tools that you can use tomorrow in your classroom. So we are going to talk about an instructional strategy to effectively teach our students. So why is something like this necessary? We have students that are struggling. We had emails go out this week. The quarter's ending this week. Remind yourself that this is not a normal year again. Our last normal year was 3 years ago. That is insane and crazy. Please give yourself grace as we follow through this year. Also, give your students grace. Our 12th graders, our seniors, the ones leaving us this year, the last normal year they had was in 9th grade. And then our 9th graders, they have not had a normal year since 6th grade. Kenowa Middle School is the last time they had a normal year. They are struggling just like we are. This year is way harder than last year. We have all of the expectations of a quote-unquote normal year when absolutely none of this is normal. And because our students are struggling, I think it's important to look at our instruction again, very similar to the way we did last year, and see what's working and what we can work on. These are the students that are struggling in first quarter here. You can see I did percentages again. I just pulled ethnicity. It is a lot of our African American and our Hispanic students. 25% of them, 1 in 4, are failing at least one course. So here is an instructional strategy that you could try in your classroom tomorrow. I'm sure you've heard of scaffolding before, and I know it might sound scary and a lot of extra work, but I'm going to show you ways that you can do it using the same materials you have, just by kind of rearranging some things and being purposeful about how you are doing your instruction. So why the heck is scaffolding important? Well, all of our students start somewhere in their knowledge. It is our job to get them to do the things that we're teaching them without assistance. So you can see over here the zone of proximal development. Yellow is our goal, tasks that students can do without our assistance. I mean, that's what we want them to do on a test or a lab or a project. The reality is some of our students are going to start out here in the teal with whatever we're assigning them to do that they can't do even with us assisting them. And then of course we're going to have some students in this bright teal that can do things with our help, and some that are already here that can take this on their own without much help from us. So the whole idea of scaffolding is to get everybody where they are to being able to do things without a lot of our assistance. So here are 4 questions to ask yourself when you are scaffolding a lesson. It's important to know where the students start, that background knowledge. We need to know where they are on this zone. Then ask yourself, what are you going to use to connect new learning to what the students already know? And then how will you break the content into smaller chunks? And when will you provide feedback? So let's go through all 4 of these questions. I have some quick things that you can do to help get you into focusing on these questions, and then I'll show you a lesson. So question number 1, how will you address background knowledge? I know for me, this was always really easy to skip. We're just going to go ahead and get started. Let's see where you are as we go on. But this background knowledge piece is really important to figure out where students are beginning and how you can help and who you need to help the most. This does not have to be a formal pre-assessment. I hated those. Totally fine if you want to use them, but sometimes I'm like, well, yeah, they don't know anything. And then I didn't use that information. So this doesn't need to be formal, it doesn't need to be a grade, but it can be something quick and easy. Like these quick ideas right here. Take 2 minutes, have your students write down or draw or think about what you know about static electricity. You can have them think about it, write it down, share it with somebody. You could have some kids share out. Again, it doesn't need to be anything formal. Another quick idea is 3 things. Have kids list 3 things they know about whatever topic you're doing. Obviously, you could create something, a Google form, a Kahoot, Pear Deck. Have students rate their previous knowledge, like give them a quick little quiz about it. You could even have students define the vocab that you're going to use in the section. So they might have to gain some background knowledge. Maybe they know it already. You could do a formal pre-assessment. You could use your data from the last unit. Like, let's say your last unit totally corresponds with the next one that you're going to. That could be your background knowledge, that you had these 3 kids fail the test, you have these 4 kids ace the test. This is what I think they know moving forward. We always talk about exit tickets, but you could also have an entry ticket, which again could be something online, could be paper and pencil, but there's plenty of ways that you can quickly assess where your students are. And it's important to know that before you move on to new stuff. Next question, what will you use to connect the new learning with what students already know? I think sometimes as teachers, we see the big picture and then we hope that kids see it too without purposely giving them time and space to draw those connections. So I think it's really important that we spend the time to actually draw those connections for students, to identify what they should be learning, how they're going to learn it, and where they're going to go. It's also extremely important to connect lessons with real world issues or with students' lives to help make something meaningful. So if you're talking about static electricity, let's talk about when they would have seen this. They've all gone down those slides before where they've gotten shocked the whole ride down. Bring that up. Maybe they have a hairbrush that in the winter always ends up pulling their hair into that static pattern. Give them those connections to real world stuff, but also draw it into other topics that you've talked about. Help your students see that big picture. So again, this doesn't need to be anything formal, but give your students that space to draw those connections. Let your students talk with each other in groups about things they've seen before. Let students maybe do some research about things that they know and try to draw it to the new material that you're learning. Question 3, how are you going to break the content down into smaller chunks? This one, I know a lot of teachers do already, maybe purposefully and maybe not, but remember, student attention span is 10 to 15 minutes. I would say it's way less right now, especially by the time you get students 5th and 6th hour. We are struggling to come back in full days still. Students are as well, and to pay attention and to be on at the top of their game. Keep instruction short. If you have 30 minutes of instruction to give, break it up. Students can only pay attention for 10 to 15 minutes. Check that learning as you go, keep the students engaged, and give support. That's the whole idea of scaffolding, is to give them support and then slowly remove it until they can do it by themselves. So a couple quick ideas. It could be something as simple as I have a 15 slide PowerPoint. I'm going to do 10 here and 5 here, smaller chunks. The I do, we do, you do, or teacher, class, group, student, like do things in that order. Always an awesome idea to model something, let them model it together, and then make sure they can do it on their own. I think it's important to explicitly show your thought process. A lot of times we talk through things. Okay, this is what I'm going to do next. But it's because it makes total and perfect sense in our brains. We've been doing this for years, some of us. So to explicitly tell your students, okay, so right now I'm thinking, how do I do this problem? Well, it is a binomial. So that means I need to do whatever you need to do. But having that explicit thought process modeled can help our students. It's important to purposely group your students. You could organize groups by their background information. You could put all the students that you know you don't need to worry about together and all the students that you're going to focus on together. You could do mixed ability groupings, whatever makes most sense for what you're doing, but that smaller chunking with purposeful grouping and peer practice can be incredibly important. Graphic organizers and flowcharts, those help get students thinking about what they're doing, and in those smaller chunks, they can piece it together. First, last, next is on the same lines of showing your thought process, but giving students a pathway of first we're going to do this, then we're going to do this, and next you should be able to accomplish this task. Kind of giving them that purpose of why they're learning things and why they're doing them in that order. Final question, when will you provide feedback? And I know sometimes when we hear feedback, we think, oh my gosh, so much grading, so much work on our part, but it doesn't need to be that way. Don't wait until the test to find out if your students are in the yellow from before. You want students to be able to do things on their own, so make sure they can do it throughout your unit. Feedback does not have to be formal. It doesn't need to be a grade. It doesn't need to be something you sit down and take time, painstakingly go through each student's worksheet or handout or whatever. Gather information as the class is working and use that. Gather feedback several times an hour, especially several times a lesson. Gallery walks are great ideas. You can have students make comments, or you as a teacher can make comments. Something as easy as that fist of 5. We've all done that before. 5 fingers if you get what's going on, 1 if you don't. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Check parts of assignment for accuracy. One thing I used to do is I'd give a worksheet out and each group would have a number, and like group number 1, problem number 1 would be the one I would be checking for accuracy. Maybe I'd give that to the students that need a little more help. And then problem number 10, I might give to my students that I know can pretty much handle anything. And I would purposely go around to each group, okay, you did the problem that's supposed to be checked for accuracy, let me check it right now. So then I am understanding as they're working if they get it, and I'm not creating a stack of papers for me to grade. Obviously, we know any online format, Kahoot, Quizlet, all that stuff is good. Feedback tools. You can comment in docs or slides as students are working. So as they're working, you could sit at your computer, make some comments up there. Little mini conferences, call students up as you're doing things. And obviously exit tickets. We had entry tickets on there, so exit tickets are another thing too. And again, these don't need to be something that's graded if that's your biggest hurdle. This could just be a quick feedback of these kids get it, these kids don't, these are the kids I'm going to work with tomorrow. So, what does this look like? How do I take all of this and actually use it tomorrow in a lesson? So, picture this lesson with me. I put my science teacher hat back on. So, I want to teach my kids about static electricity. I have a PowerPoint I'm going to do, and then we're going to play around with the Van de Graaff generator. That's the big thing with the ball on top that you put your hand on and your hair stands up and you can shock people with it. And then I got a worksheet for them. A lot of our students are going to learn this way. They're going to understand the material, they'll be good to go, and we can move on. But we're going to leave some kids behind with this. My lecture is 20 slides long. We're going to lose some kids along the process. The Van de Graaff generator experiment, it's going to be fun. Kids are going to like it, but I'm going to tell them exactly what's happening, and it might not stick. And then the worksheet, if they don't finish it, it's homework. Some kids are going to turn it in, some aren't. So how can I scaffold this lesson to turn it into something where I'm reaching more students? So, same exact materials. We can rearrange them and we can be purposeful about what we're doing with them. So let's start with background knowledge. I'm going to start my class and say, where have you ever experienced static electricity? I'll give them some time to think about it. I'll have them turn and talk with the person sitting next to them, and then I'll call on a few kids and let them share out. Now I kind of have an idea of where students are, if they've experienced this before, and they can like associate their experiences with this word, and who's going to need more help. Connections. We could break out the Van de Graaff generator before we do the lecture. I can show them the Van de Graaff generator and then have them talk about the lesson we did before. We talked about atoms before. How part of the atom is positive and part of it's negative, and how like charges attract and like charges repel and opposites attract. And then I can have them build those connections together. Again, they can talk in groups. They can come up with what they think might be happening. And then I'm going to teach. I'm going to do the lecture. Halfway through the lecture, I'm going to stop and ask them to revise what they thought was happening with the Van de Graaff generator. This is going to get kids talking. This is going to get kids making connections on their own. And it's going to get kids to be able to describe what's happening without me doing it for them. We can share things out. We can talk through what's happening. We can draw pictures of what's happening. I'm still using all of my same materials that I had before, but hopefully more kids are engaged. They're talking through things on their own and not just sitting and getting information, and hopefully that helps it sink in a little more. I can finish the other half of my lecture, same PowerPoint. Maybe it's still all 20 slides. I did 10 and then 10 more. And then feedback. So instead of just a worksheet that I might grade, or maybe I just grade on completion, I can put students in purposeful groups and have them work through this same worksheet, and maybe we can check it as we go. Or maybe I can walk around and give feedback as they're doing it. Speed dating is another one on there that I like to do, where I have students work in groups, kind of like musical chairs, and then I play music, you get up, you have to move chairs and work together with a different group of people. Obviously with COVID that might not be the best idea, but it's another one. So these two are the exact same lesson. It's the exact same material. I'm even using the same worksheet and the same PowerPoint slides, but you can obviously see that there is a difference in the delivery. And the purpose of this is to give you those ideas to change the delivery a little bit, so hopefully we can help reach all of our students, including the ones that are struggling right now with this whole idea of normal school in a very abnormal world. So hopefully this is something you can use tomorrow in your class, next week in your class. Please let me know if you have any questions on anything. I am here to help, and I hope you guys enjoy your PLC time. Have a great day.